around the country are faced with the choice: feed the family dog or fill her up. Mr. Obama, simply put, has no clue on how to reduce gas prices. If you take his word for it, our current rate of oil production is higher than, quote, ever before. Listen.
Sometimes I get letters from constituents who say, why aren't we just drilling more here? We're actually producing more oil here than ever.
Sorry, Mr. Obama, you're absolutely wrong. How can you make this claim? You can't be serious. Or is this another case of fuzzy math from Mr. Obama? Or maybe something entirely more sinister here at work? Let's break it down for a second. One of the highest years for domestic oil production was 1970. We were producing 9.6 million barrels per day. In 2010, we produced just over 5.5 million barrels per day. Last time I checked, 9.6 was more than 5.5, is 4.1 million more, but he says we're producing more now. And if you're still not convinced, take this chart directly from the Department of Energy. It says it all. Look at this. 1970, 9 million barrels a day. 1986, 9 billion. It's a declining slope all the way to 2008. We've lost nearly 43% of our total production. Joining me now to make sense of all this is former Shell Oil President, Mr. John Hofmeister. John, we've had the Energy Secretary, Stephen Chu, tell us that $8 gallons of gasoline are probably a good thing because it would get us off of dependence on oil. We've got Mr. Bromwich, who runs the Minerals Management Service. He has no idea what the production is going on in the Gulf. What's with the Obama administration? Is this selective fuzzy math? What are they up to?
Well, I think when I retired from Shell, the last thing I said to the board of directors in London was, look, we're probably going to have a different president who's going to be anti-hydrocarbon. And the anti-hydrocarbon president is going to make sure that the costs in the U.S. go up for hydrocarbon products because his funders, the people who back him, want to see high hydrocarbon costs because it makes alternative energy look like it's not so expensive. But it is. I also told Senator Obama when he was running for office, if you don't drill more oil in your first term, you are going to face ungodly gasoline prices when you run for re-election. That was in 2007. This is 2011, and guess what? He's facing ungodly gas prices because he didn't drill in his first term.
On the way up, he didn't drill. Let's talk about the EPA for a second. There are about 40 or 50 boutique fuels around the country required by the EPA. It depends if you're on the West Coast, the East Coast, if your climate is warm, if it's cold, if it has high altitude. Why all the different boutique fuels? Do we really need that many?
Well, the EPA has all these regional centers, and bureaucrats do what they do. They write regulations. So we have all these multiplicity of standards for different parts of the country, which really, I mean, the atmosphere doesn't know state boundaries. The atmosphere moves all over the country. We could get by with about a half a dozen standards, meet the air quality the nation needs.
And what would that do to the price? Wouldn't that allow refiners to refine, I don't know, 4 or 5 fungible fuels?
Well, one of the reasons that people always have price increases around Memorial Day is we're kicking in the summer standards in different parts of the country, but they're not the same. They're all different. So refineries have to put additional costs into how they manufacture gasoline in order to meet those requirements that the EPA puts on them.
All right, John, $103 a barrel, $104 a barrel. Does that, I mean, I can hear right now, the left is going to go, oh, there's plenty of oil, it shouldn't be 103. But does that 103, today's price for oil, reflect today's price or the value that people perceive going forward, a price for forward oil?
It has an impact from the future. Today's demand is not equal to the supply. In other words, there's more supply than there is demand. But people are very worried who buy oil in the future that there's not going to be enough, so they're willing to pay more to guarantee deliveries. Here's what's going on. The whole world is watching what China is doing. That is, the whole world that trades oil. China is going to go from 9 million barrels a day today to 15 million barrels a day consumption by 2015. That's 6 million new barrels. Nobody knows where it's coming from. China does. China is loaning billions and billions of dollars to state-owned oil companies to make sure they have oil when they need it. They're not going to look out for the global trading market. They want to guarantee their oil deliveries. So $25 billion to Russia, $23 billion to Nigeria, $10 billion to Brazil, $16 billion to Kazakhstan. These are big numbers, but they're going to guarantee they have oil.
There's about an 83 million barrel, right now we use and produce about 83 million barrels. Is that right or so?
It's closer to 86.
86 million barrels. So if China steps up and needs 6 more million barrels, where's it coming from? Saudi Arabia, maybe 1 or 2?
Well, maybe, but here's what we could do in the U.S., and I said this to Congress last February. We have more oil than Saudi Arabia, for Pete's sake, in this country. Let's go back where we used to be. Let's go back to the 10 million barrel level. We use 20, so we'd only be at half of our consumption if we produced 10. I said, in addition, you raise $20 billion in new royalty for the federal government, which helps the deficit. You create 3 million new jobs in this country. Everybody's talking about jobs. The unemployment is 9%. For Pete's sake, we're not making jobs in this country because we have an administration that refuses to produce domestic natural resources.
If we went from 5.6 million barrels a day to 10, how many more jobs would there be available? What kind of job creation?
We're looking at between 3 and 4 million jobs. New jobs, American jobs, high-paying jobs with benefits, not service jobs with no benefits. But we can't get the administration, and the Democrats in the Senate are more worried about tax breaks than they are about consumer prices at the pump.
So jobs go up, price of fuel goes...
Well, jobs go up, price of fuel goes down.
Goes down. Everyone around here, when I walked in the room, said, "Hey, Bowling, what's going on with the price of gas?" I said, "Don't take my word for it. Up. I've said up for the better part of 3 years. Take John Hofmeister's word for it. Price of fuel."
Price of fuel, I think this summer is going to be around where it is now because there's some uncertainties out there and the geopolitics seems to be, but that could change any day. $5 next year. I said 6 months ago, we're looking at $5 gasoline when we go to the polls in 2012,
okay.
Sure as we're sitting
and very
here.
quickly, the mighty Mississippi River is cresting right now. If it floods, if it overflows, there are some refineries in the path of some of that water. Is that a risk to, in fact, higher prices?
Yeah, from Baton Rouge all the way to New Orleans, there are a number of very large refineries that are at risk. The levees should hold. They're taking steps to relieve the pressure by opening up gates before Baton Rouge. Hopefully we'll be okay.
But there's some big refineries down there, right?
Very big. And it would really dent daily production. And we are living somewhat hand to mouth. I mean, everybody talks about the inventories at Cushing being very large. No, the number's large, but remember we use 20 million barrels a day. Sure. It doesn't take long to use up that inventory.
All right, John Hofmeister, thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you.